Hello, everybody. Welcome to a spontaneous live stream called Moderating a Virtual Conference Panel. Nice little snappy title for you there. And it's inspired by an experience I've had today. And so generally, to set the scene, whether I'm a keynote speaker or a panelist or the moderator of a panel, I'm talking obviously about live conferences traditionally, sort of pre-COVID situation. Regardless of whether you're a speaker, panelist, or moderator, the general thing is obviously you have to, most of all, the difference to a virtual one is you have to actually go to the place where the conference is. And so, yeah, the whole general typical situation is you've got to get there. The prep is, generally you kind of know what's involved when you're any one of those three roles, if you like. So moving it into the COVID world and the virtual world that we've been in this year, I've actually, as you know, I did the Daily Sib, which isn't a conference or wasn't a conference. It was a sort of podcasty video interview format, but nonetheless utilizing certain newer technologies to connect with people and create content, really, and to serve the broader community and the broader purpose. I'm talking in generic terms of, whenever generally there's, whether it's content or conferences, it's about adding value to your audience, to your community, to your tribe. I quite like that sense of having a tribe when you share those sort of common interests. And then I was and still will be doing some keynote talks. So I spoke at the International sort of Association for Air Travel. I've got another airline one coming up in December. There was one for Visit England. So yeah, done a fair bit of the sort of keynote speaker and being a panelist. But anyway, the inspiration for going live today is that I've just done the virtual conference, which was in Spain. And for those of you that have followed me for a few years, you'll know that I generally, as a blogger, was invited, all expenses paid, whether it was for a conference or more generally to do consultancy work or to sort of review different destinations for its accessibility. And Spain is somewhere I've always been very, very passionate about, and you might say in love with. I've lived there on and off for a few periods of time a few years ago. When I lived there, I was learning and trying to pick up more of the language, but that kind of, if you don't use it, you lose it situation has happened over a longer period of time. And yeah, not quite, I wouldn't sound quite fluent, but nonetheless, love Spain, love the language, love the culture. The people are just always so amazing to hang out with. And so, yeah, it became a bit of a sort of a spiral in a positive way, that the more I went to Spain, the more I met people, the more they invited me back. So I've been to like the northwest in Asturias, where I actually lived for quite a while, spent a lot of time in Catalonia, which is obviously where Barcelona is, but stayed in other parts as well. And then there's a particular NGO or charity called Predif. And I think 2 years ago, I went to Valencia on what they call a FAM trip, which is like a familiarization trip, or you could also call it a press trip. And they've sort of changed more from a traditional press trip where you get, journalists of the national newspapers and TV being invited. And obviously with the rise of social media blogging and influencer marketing, you get the sort of experts and the influencers within all sorts of different niches. So I was always invited out as a expert influencer in the disability and accessible tourism world. So we did a trip to Madrid. I've spoken at a big conference for ONCE, which is like a really big charity out in Spain. They do like a lottery, but from the proceeds, they spend a lot on projects for disabled people. They partner with Vodafone, for at least when I was there sort of 2-3 years ago. So yeah, I met Predif, this other NGO, and have been involved in some of the FAM trips and the conferences. So anyway, they decided to run a virtual accessible tourism conference, and they asked me to be a moderator. So I agreed quite a while ago, and there's been various emails going around, and there's sort of some only in Spanish, and I've sort of grasped what I could. A lot of them were in English and Spanish. So I was in charge of the session on entrepreneurship and employment within accessible tourism. So there were 3 panelists that had all prepared their own speech and were going to send me their biography. And I know how I am when I'm a panelist. I'm not always the most prepared in advance. It's sort of a 11th hour, here's my slides and here's my bio. Maybe now I've been a moderator, I understand how that's not always the best way from the other person's perspective. So anyway, this morning I'd got all of the bios in, and I'd sort of got my head round the format, the agenda of the session. So I would do an intro, welcome the viewers. It was all done on Zoom, which I've used Zoom quite a bit, and talk about some of the accessibility features. And that was the bit I wanted to clarify. And we had a test session. So again, very organized. There was a test session either last Friday or this morning. So I went to the one this morning, obviously. And then, yeah, once that was done, share a few thoughts I have on the topic and experiences. And then, yeah, do the intro to each person before they did like a 20-minute talk. And then at the end, there was like a Q&A. So anyway, nothing bad happened. I feel maybe I'm making it sound overly mysterious or building up something that's not as crazy as it might feel like it's coming. But it was just a very surreal experience. And the reason actually that it was more surreal, considering, as I said, I've done lots of online content, done lots of keynote speaking. I suppose one difference is I've maybe not been the moderator as much, but I've generally done sort of group conversations and round tables. But being in another language, there were a live translation. And so one of the things that wasn't quite perfect was only on one of the speakers, which is a bit strange that this happened. I could hear the English translator by clicking there's a feature that's enabled if and when you need it on Zoom. And so I could hear the person translating to English, but for one of the other panelists, I could hear them speaking in Spanish. And it was really hard. It was a cacophony of noise that was really hard to, even if it was only in Spanish, I might have grasped from some of my basic Spanish what was going on. But with the 2 people and the 2 languages, that was quite a challenge. Fortunately, for the other 2 speakers, I got the English translation loud and clear without the actual original person speaking in Spanish. So that was, just a bit of a quirky side to it, shall we say, but managed to, get through it positively. And I think most of the people on the webinar, was like 120 people, most of them were Spanish speakers. So for them, it was fine. There was maybe 2 or 3 that had that sort of difficulty with the English translation. Christiana just said, "This is great. I wonder if we can work together. I'd love to tell you about an inclusivity and accessibility initiative I've become involved with. I'll drop you a line." Awesome, Christina. I look forward to hearing from you. I've actually got a meeting at 3:00, and I really wanted to share this story with you before going on my 3:00. So I'm going to have to come a bit to an abrupt end. But in terms of Christiana's comment, I look forward to hearing more about your project and having a chat with you later in the week. That would be awesome. But yeah, just the other thing to add was there was another setting called closed captions. It was worded closed captions. And so if someone was to click that, they got the captions, the live captions of what was being spoken. So it sort of comes up as subtitles. And there was a live BSL interpreter. Now, there's a whole tangent about, for me, when I was in the Daily SIP, I just haven't got the resources to pay the BSL interpreter. There wasn't a need for a language interpreter, but the closed captions and the BSL, I just haven't had the financial resources to do that when I was doing it daily as well. And also like now, like, this is a spontaneous. So I'm fully aware I need to find other ways to make these live streams more inclusive and accessible to everybody. That's not lost on me. But Predif are a massive charity, a bit like Scope or Leonard Cheshire, and this was their annual conference. So yeah, they had the resources and the means. And so I just wanted to share that, there was a barrier to inclusion over the language, which was solved by the language interpreter. And for deaf or hearing impaired people, there was the BSL and the closed captions as well. So in the end, I just wanted to share a positive experience that there were speakers from all over the world, really amazing talks on my particular session around inclusive tourism, all different kind of agendas. Kevin saying the subtitles work great. I know that on my Facebook, the subtitles come up live. So maybe if anyone is wanting subtitles with my live streams, as Kevin says, head over to my Facebook. I know on my Periscope and LinkedIn and YouTube, it's not necessarily doing live captioning, but it's good to know it works on Facebook anyway. So yeah, I'm feeling really buzzing after moderating a core panel. The panelists were brilliant. The conference was brilliant. And most of all, the accessibility and inclusion was all covered. And I guess it just shows when there's a will, there's a way, right? Really amazing. So apologies, I've got to skip off very quick. Kevin, I've got your email in my inbox about the conference in December, which I will get around to later, I promise. But I'm heading off to another meeting now. And this was a quick one in between various other bits and bobs in the day. Hope you found this beneficial. Comment on the replay as well if you've got any questions or thoughts on this topic. And I will be back on again sometime soon with some kind of spontaneous message. In the meantime, take care and bye-bye.